Hello, and welcome to the live stream. Let's wait a couple minutes, about 3 minutes. People are going to be starting to come in. So I'm going to start with a poll. I am by no means an expert uh, on doing live streams on this, so I'm going to put a poll as people join. This is a question about um, how you know about the Laserbox machines. So feel free to respond to that poll, and we'll get going once a few more people join us. Welcome, welcome. Let's see how this goes. I'll also comment if you can hear me. Hey Ashley, I tested the audio and the video. Hi Camille. Just making sure everything's up and running, and feel free as you see the poll in the top right of your screen, go ahead and reply to it. Hey Kim. Hi M. Yay. I'm heard. All right. Good evening. Hi Dan. You're welcome. I totally I totally remember what it's like when you're first starting out and it's hard to find answers to stuff. So happy to share what I know and happy to learn from other people along the way. So feel free to answer the poll. We got another minute or so and then we'll get up and running. So, and let me know if you don't see the poll as well. I think I activated it, but if you don't see it, please let me know. My feed is breaking up. Okay, I will try and stop clicking on things then. Slow and steady. All right, welcome to everybody else. As people are coming in, it's now 9. So let me know if you can still see me. I'm gonna get going, and we'll check back in on the poll in a little bit. So answer that as you come in. All right. So there we go. So I'm gonna post. All right. So here we go. So we're going to be talking about color block mode. I'm not sure how many of you have used color block mode in the past. It's a way that you can use the color in your design to actually import into the Laserbox software, which is really helpful when you're doing complicated things. So first off, I design an Inkscape personally. So here is the simplest way to use color block, which is in testing materials. So each of these color blocks has it has color on the inside, but what's important for color block is that you also have a stroke around the outside. So in Inkscape, you can add that stroke by holding down Shift and then clicking down below. So in this example, I have the inside of the box the same as the outside. And so I could do 9 different settings. So these blocks are very small. I can do 9 different engraving settings in the same job. And so that way I can find out, the best settings much faster and not use up materials. So that is how that works. And so we're going to go head over into the Laserbox software, and you'll be able to see how that will import. So here we are in the Laserbox software. I'm going to go ahead and a little bug, but something to be aware of. If you're on the Design tab, it actually won't import color block. So you want to make sure you're in flat surface mode. And so what we're going to do is do import, and then color block test. And so you can see here it's imported and it has the outlines. So in this example, we're not wanting to cut or score. So we want to go to the Design tab and we want to click Fill. That way, each of these will be engraved. So when I click on it, I can change the settings in that line. So for engraving, my typical speed is 265, and then for this is Baltic birch, around 60, and then I can do again another setting, 265, and then I can do 70, and then I can click on the next one, and I can populate. So all of these are 265, 60, 70, 80. I can then have this row be another speed, maybe a lot slower, and then the same settings. So this allows you to test a whole bunch of different settings in one job at the same time, and it wastes very minimal material. This is a very small amount of material. I'm going to check in on our poll and close that out. And let's see if I know how to do that. So I appreciate everybody coming out and checking this out. All right, so let's try and show results. Oh, waiting for a signal to resume. Let me check and see. A few delays are happening. All right, are we back again? All right. Okay. Well, hopefully you all are still here. I still see people commenting, so we'll keep on going. So in this, this way we can do a bunch of different settings at one time. So that's the basic use of color block, is for getting good settings. Another use, we're going to go back into Inkscape. So we got that. So another use is if you're wanting to do three different things within the same, three or more in the same document. So here is a design that I did. It's an SVG. Each of these are lines. So it's all line art. This is a SVG file. And as I was designing this, it was really important to be able to do them quickly because they're, Christmas gifts, but also to work within the limits of the machine. So the machine, the top speed, if you're doing things that are back and forth, it can get choppy. It can have issues. And so what's important is to, I designed it for that in mind. So as you can see, there are different colors here. There's orange, which is the color I use for engraving. So the top of the smoke is going to be engraved. And then I use green for the chimney. And again, I did this, it took quite a bit of time, but the chimney. And then down here, I found that when I did my testing, this lattice work, I had to slow down. So if I did it at the speed that these other straight lines did it, it would start skipping around. It had issues. And so by breaking the design up this way, I was able to do a lot finer detail. And if I were to engrave this, I believe the estimate was like 35 minutes. It was in a ridiculous amount of time, but by changing it to lines, no fill, and be able to change the speed for each of these, I'm able to do one of these in 7 minutes. And so 7 to 9 minutes. So that's what we're going to be demonstrating. I'm going to pause for a second and look at the comments and see if there's any questions on this. The design took a bit of time. So is this any questions so far on that? All right, I am not seeing any questions. All right, so we're gonna move on and I'm gonna import this. So we're gonna switch over to the Laserbox software. And then I already have it imported, but I'm gonna import it again to show you what that looks like. Again, we're in flat surface mode. And so we're gonna click import. And then this is house. All right, so it is imported. When you import a SVG file, it always just comes in as lines. So the parts that we're going to be engraving, so up here and the name, we're going to go to the Design tab, and then we're going to click Fill. So that way it knows those two portions are to be engraved. Some of the other things we're going to change, the settings for the red. So the red is going to be 70 speed, 40% power. Anything that's changing direction quickly, I never do at 80 millimeters because that's max speed. So we're going to do that at 70. We're going to do 70 and then 60 power. So a bit more power for the chimney and for the chairs and the Christmas tree in here. And then 70, 40. Let's bump this a little lower. So let's try 60, 40 for this lattice work. And then for cutting, this is 3 millimeter Baltic birch. And so we're gonna do 4 millimeters per second. And then we're gonna do 50 power. Something else I really like about color block mode is you're not having issues trying to select pieces, and like if you want to change all of the color, you can just click on that color and it selects everything. So all of this green, it selects. Or let's say, oh, we want to now group things together. We can click on this, which is a different green. So we'll click on that. And then when we click down on the green, it'll create the green the same as the other green. So when we clicked on that green, it's now grouped together. So when we click on it, it's going to be the same green for both of these. I have tons of colors down here because I've used color block mode a lot. But in Inkscape, if you use the same colors for the same kind of functions, like I have a purple that's my cutting purple, and I just have to use that stroke and it'll come in with the settings remembered. I'm gonna pause again and check to see if there's any questions on this. All right. who haven't upgraded the software should be. I'm not sure which software you're talking about. I'm currently running 1.91 for the Laserbox software. For my Inkscape, I'm using an older, it's like 2 versions ago. What happens if the speed is higher? So I assume you're asking for if the speed is higher for cutting. So cutting speed is the max is 80 millimeters per second. And so if you go too fast, it will try to do things too quickly and it'll get lost. So the head will actually skip. And so it'll be off if you're trying to do scoring at maximum speed. So hopefully that answers your question. Another thing that some people run into is they say they've imported something to color block mode. Oops. They've imported something into color block mode, and then they say that they can't get up to, over 80. And so to be able to get up to over 80 millimeters per second, like I showed before, you've got to go to the Design tab and then click Fill. So we're going to, I'm going to set this up to run. And I'm going to check and see if we have any other questions. All right. And so we are 3 millimeter Baltic birch. The red is going to go 70 millimeters per second. Another note is these are opposite of the other thing, so make sure that your speed is your speed. And you can see down in the lower left, I had it cutting out because I had switched those when I was practicing earlier today. So 70, 40, 60, 40, we're going slightly slower on the lattice work. And then engraving, we're going to do 264, 70. And then for the chairs, we're going to do 70 millimeters per second. And then we're going to cut out 4 millimeters per second and then 50 power. So we'll go ahead and send that over. And then I'm going to switch cameras over to the Laserbox. And we're going to press go. And before I press go, it is always important to have, if you have a inline fan, to turn that on. So if it's a little louder in here, it's because I just cranked up my inline fan. All right, while that gets started up, I'm going to check again and see if we have other questions or comments. All right, I am not seeing comments. So let me make sure. Okay. So while this is going, some other things you can do with color block mode. Again, let me know if you can't hear me. I'm going to try and speak loudly because it's a little loud in here. While another thing you can use color block mode for is to, when you have masking, you can cut through the masking. And so I think that's going well. So I'm going to switch over to another application. So you can cut through masking. So say you wanted to do something like a Mother's Day card on wood, you can use scoring to cut through the masking and not through the wood itself. And then you can peel that masking off to do taping. And so I did a Mother's Day plaque with that. Let me pull that up for you all, and then I'll switch over to that so you can see what that looks like. Alright, so Mother's Day. And we will switch, pull that over. Alright, alright. So I had a commission to do Mother's Day. This is out of wood. And so how this is designed was to be able to cut around the petals, so using a scoring, and then peel that tape away and then paint them, and then to be able to engrave through for the inside, and then to cut it out. So the green was engraved away, and then all the pink is scored, and then you can see there's sort of two tones on the Mother's Day. That was scored around the outside, and then also engraved in the middle. And that took two different layers in the file with different strokes on them to get that effect. Checking in on questions. All right. Mary Chris asks, so design mode, do you need to classify which gets cut or engraved? How low power do you need to go for scoring and speed? Okay, great questions. So in the design mode, to be able to have it do engraving, it has to be filled in. So with an SVG file, it sees all the lines as cut lines. And so if it's not infilled on that design mode, you click that infill, and then it tells it to engrave that space. If it's not filled in, it's going to consider it cutting or scoring, and the only difference is the speed. And so how low power can you go for scoring? So scoring, it depends on the material. With wood, you can typically get away with like 30 power and up, depending on um, how black you want it to be, like how deep you want the scoring to be. And then the speed, I typically keep the speed up around 70%, 70 millimeters per second. When you drop down, it goes deeper and deeper. So the slower the speed, the slower, the more it's likely to cut through, even at low power. So you want to keep the speed in the 70, 75 range, 60 range, up towards the higher end. All right, I'm going to switch us back over to the, you can see how quickly it's going. It's just very quickly scoring those lines. And so, again, like I said, trying to engrave this. All right, there we go. Trying to engrave this would have taken a really long time, but scoring it gives a nice burnt appearance, and it goes quickly. So let's see how much time we have left. We have about 1 minute and 46 seconds left. My guess is it's almost to the point where it's going to be cutting it out. All right. Any other questions while we're waiting that to finish up? Let's go back. yep, you can see that it's cutting out. Um, Again, with the design, um, anything that's engraved and cut out, you need to have both of those separate. So I made a separate layer for that chimney smoke, as I did for the unified outline around the whole thing. All right. So I got another 30 seconds. Let me go back over to Inkscape. So again, that's another great way to use this is scoring. Um, um, Another way to use it is for cutting boards. So especially bamboo cutting boards. I saw Camille posted an amazing cutting board that she did this technique by accident, but you can do it on purpose as well. Um, and that is to do an engrave and then to also do a scoring line around it. And so with things like bamboo, where it's the same wood, but there's a lot of different densities right next to each other, by having that defined score edge, it gives the whole piece extra definition. And so that's another way to use the cutting, um, the engraving and scoring together. I did a cutting board for my mother-in-law, and we had people send in, had her all of her grandkids trace in their hands, and then I digitized those, and we put those all on the cutting board. Um, and it would have taken forever to engrave all of that. So the hands I traced in Inkscape as lines, as path lines, and then engraved those. All right, I'm gonna check and see if we have any other questions, and we're gonna check out our results. So let me flip around and we'll look at that. All right. All right. So here we are. You can see. I probably went a little deep on the chairs, but you can see there's a ton of detail. And again, if you were to engrave this, it would take a lot longer. So the smoke's engraved, so it's got a nice texture there. And then the stonework on the chimney, and then you can see again, probably went a little dark on that, but you can see what scoring looks like. All right, let's look for other questions. All right, so let me show you the cutting board file, and I can answer any questions about. I know cutting boards are incredibly popular, so we're gonna go on over to that. And then I'll do the scoring on the masking so you guys can see what that looks like as well. All right. There we go. Nana. Again, some of this is just, experience. Once you figure out the settings that work for you for color block, it gets a lot easier. And like I said, if you keep specific um, settings set to color, then then that'll work out as well. All right, so let me pull up Inkscape for y'all. And so here's the file. The outside, I'm not actually cutting. So the outside was actually, I measured the cutting board itself, and I measured the hole that was in the cutting board just to be able to get the layout. When I went to actually engraving, I took those away. And so, so it's Nana's Kitchen, hands down, best food anywhere. And then each of these is traced out. And so I traced it out by importing the hand image and then using the Bezier tool to go around and trace it into a path file. So it's each of the kids and their own hands, approximate size. Some of the family is overseas, so they weren't all in the same place to trace them. And then, so then on the cutting board, pulling this in, I would use the stroke on these, would be orange stroke, which is what I have for engraving. And then for the path, I would probably, none of these are terribly intricate. Maybe this one over here. They probably all be around 70 speed, and then around, 30-ish, probably on the high end power to get that engraved look. Sadly, I shipped this away to Atlanta, so I don't have it to show you, but it turned out really well. There's posts in the group. You can see what Camille did for her cutting board, and other people have done cutting boards where they've done the scoring and the engraving, so check those out. All right. So let's get to the masking. So I'm going to pull up, just for example, I'm going to pull up our settings file, because that one's easy to do. So that's going to be, and then we're going to cut through the masking, and I'll be able to show you what that looks like with painting. All right, so here we go. Inkscape. All right. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to import this, and then we're going to score those lines on the masking. So I'm going to flip that around, and then we're going to import and send that. Type any questions you have, and we'll get to them. All right. Laserbox. All right, so questions. All right, how did you digitize? Okay, so they sent me a picture, and then I took the Bezier tool. So I can show you that while this is going. So give me a second. Pull this in. So delete this. We are using 3mm Baltic birch. I'm going to import color block test. Okay. So what this works well for is things like intricate things where you want to just remove parts of the tape and to be able to paint over them. So for these settings, I'm going to just use scoring settings. So let's do 70 speed, and then I'm going to do 20 power. And then select all of these, and then there you go, change them. So again, the speed, 70 speed, and then 20 power. All right, and then we'll get that started. Actually, let me copy, paste, and then I'm going to make a cut line. That'll make it a little easier. So copy, paste, and then we'll just make that bigger, put it around the outside, and then we'll go, there we go, our cutting settings. All right, we'll stick that back in. It's neat that you can use the spacing tool, so you can see these are now online in both directions. You guys can see that. So it's 2 millimeters, and it's centered on both of those. All right, so I'm gonna get this started. This should go incredibly quickly. Turning the fan on, and then I will pull in. I'll pull in an image and just show you the Bezier tool. All right. Import. All right. Next. All right. So let me pull that in. I see lots of questions. Let me pull this in, and then I will show you the Bezier tool, and then we will go back to painting. Yeah, plenty of time. All right, so here is Inkscape. All right, so let me get that. There we go. All right, so when you pull in a shape, so File, Import, and then we will just take an image. This is a bit complex, but you'll get the idea. So this is a image, and so say we want to do an outline of the hat. So say we're scoring the hat. Over here, the Bezier tool is right here. So it draws lines. And so we'll focus in on the hat. Again, this would be really hard, to try and digitize this. And the trick with this is where it changes direction is where you stop. So we're going to start at the top, and I'm going to click. Then I'm going to click where it changes direction again. So just clicking around where it changes direction. All right, so now we have complete piece. And then when we go to the node tool, you then can click on and bend. You can just bend it so it matches the shape. And that's why it's important that you have those where it switches. So, and again, with kids' hands, this took a little bit of time, but any of those imperfections just made it even more memorable. So just very, very roughly. And again, the more you want to put into this, the better it'll look. But now we have a scoring or a cutting line for that hat. So that's the basics of how I did those handprints. All right, let me check on questions, and then I'll bring out the, okay, scanned. They took a picture of it. Handprint, easiest way to do it. So the easiest way I found is that Bezier tool to make score lines. You can also, depending on what it looks like, if Bring Sketch to Life doesn't work for you, you can also use the marquee tool if you're doing engraving. Like if not all the letters showed up, you can go ahead and use the marquee tool to finish that up. All right. Okay, so here we go. So now let's pull out our scored tile. And then I have some pottery tools, which is what I use as my weeding tools. And you can see, or maybe you can't see, that it scored lines through the tape. And so just with this, pulling just a little bit on the edges, you can pull away the masking and leave the frame. So you can see that. Again, doing probably a little bit more power would have made this a little more clean. So you can play with the thickness of your tape. Again, ideally, you want it to cut through your tape and not leave any marks on your wood. So here I can paint the square and then leave the adjoining tape on. All right. Let's see if there's other. So, okay. So it looks like my lovely wife has has gotten a picture of the cutting board. So let me show that to you all. So here's the finished cutting board with the scoring, and so I believe the hands down and the food anywhere was engraved, and then the rest of it was scored. So yeah, so I definitely recommend that for especially bamboo cutting boards. All right. So besides the products, what other interesting things have I made? Um, so my profile picture on Facebook is probably the largest thing that I've made. It's a a lending library that was like 4 feet tall. All the acrylic, the wood, all that was laser cut on the Laserbox Pro, and yeah, it took me a couple months to do. Again, if I were to do another one, it'd be a lot faster. But you can do huge things piecing together stuff that fits in your laser box. So don't feel limited in any way by just what will fit in. Um, I've also done some acrylic mosaics. Those are super fun. I have a YouTube channel if you want to check that out. I did a video that was like my first year plus of projects, so you can see pictures of all those things that I was talking about. That's Char's Craft Haven. So let's see if there's any other questions. And if not, I think I will call this to a close. I appreciate all 13 plus of you for showing up on a Monday night. So if there are other topics or other things that you'd like to see in a live stream, please, comment in the new group. Add people to the new group, invite people, so we can build more Laserbox community. Let me see if I'm missing anything on the comments. It is loading. All right, beautiful. Thank you. I appreciate the compliment. You're welcome, Kim. So, all right. Well, again, if you guys would like to see more live streams, let me know. I know this is super brief overview, but if there's more topics, more things, feel free to shout out in the new group, and we will see you for the next time. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening.